Ladies and gents, welcome back to another podcast. Today I'm joined by another AI native business. Merrill and Greg, respectively founders of the business alongside Tomas. Greg, engineer at Airbnb and Google. Merrill previously founded Postmetrics and has also done some product stuff at Square. I'm really interested in diving into the podcast today and talking a little bit about what Graphite are building and building their code review platform in the age of AI. So, Greg or Merrill, do you want to kick us off? Give us a bit of an intro into Graphite, mission, product, what you're building. What's the story?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Elliot. Uh,
Pleasure.
so Graphite is building the code review platform for the age of AI. And what we mean by that is, obviously, AI is just transforming the way that software is built today. It's giving every engineer these amazing tools and leverage to help them create features and ship faster than ever. But I think one of the core themes and our core theses with Graphite is that anyone who's worked and built software with a team knows that just writing the code is only the first part of the story. Every change still needs to be reviewed, tested, deployed, and make sure that it's correct, that it's performant, that it's secure, and that outer loop process, especially at enterprises, often ends up being even more of the bottleneck than just writing the code in the first place. And now with all of these amazing AI tools, that problem is just getting 10 times worse because every engineer can write code so much faster. They're creating more pull requests than ever. And the outer loop process, we're trying to run all that code through the same set of outer loop tools and processes that we have for the past 10 years since GitHub created the pull request. And that is the problem that we're solving. We're applying both traditional and more AI native methods to accelerating code review. So we in the beginning we drew from kind of the tooling at places like Meta and Google that have these companies that have built their own code review platforms and help teams of tens of thousands of engineers ship as quickly as possible. Things like stack PRs, merge queues, automations, more of those like deterministic and traditional methods for accelerating review. And then now combining that with a more AI native approach of using these models to review code as well. And we build an AI code review agent called Diamond that reviews every code change in a few seconds. Gives like human level feedback to every engineer as they're putting up pull requests, and dramatically cuts down the number of human hours and the number of back and forth cycles needed to actually get a change from draft PR out to production.
Love that. That is some cracking insight. I do want to break out your niche. I want to try and understand a little bit more about the niche of the product, what you've actually carved out, and also your thinking behind carving out this niche.
So the niche of the product, I'd say that graphite is an interesting product because it is this entire tool chain that we think about where we kind of live in several different niches, and the whole is truly like greater than the sum of the parts here. So, and perhaps to give the right way to frame this is talking through the history of graphite a little bit and where we came from. So in the beginning, we started before AI was any good at writing code. We are building. The three of us were all friends from school. We all had seen what great developer toolchains look like at larger companies. Had all then also seen how correspondingly bad what was available to the rest of the world was, and wanted to kind of take some of that magic that we'd seen and make it available to every company. And we were actually building a different product. It was like a native iOS app release platform in the beginning. Same general thesis of like take what we saw at big companies and make it available to the rest of the world. And Graphite really emerged from just an internal project where we hired a few of Tomas's ex-coworkers from Meta. They had this kind of shared experience of when we set them up on GitHub, they get really frustrated with how slow the code review process was, and they spent some time during a hackathon at one point and basically rebuilt the Meta Stack PR's command line interface just to have that workflow back. And it kind of took on a life of its own. Word got out to some other ex-Meta folks that we built this. They started kind of asking us to make this available to their companies and not just ours. And long story short, we ended up pivoting, focusing the entire company on code review tooling, and built out this entire tool chain. So starting from the command line interface for creating and working with stacked PRs, to an inbox for organizing where are all the changes in flight, the review interface for showing and navigating stacks and reviewing them, a merge queue to handle the volume of code changes merging at once, automations for pull requests for assigning reviewers in a more granular and controllable way than code owners can. And then now with Diamond, this similarly, like now building an AI agent to like review code, all of which lives in the Graphite pull request interface. So it's interesting because one question we get a lot is like, who's your biggest competitor? And it's hard to answer because there are companies that build just merge queues. There's open source tools like Jujitsu right now is getting really popular around like just working with stacked PRs. There's certainly there's a new YC company every batch that's doing like AI powered code reviews, but nobody does all of it really. I think that's the thing that I think that we see as building the enduring value here is having the entire end-to-end tool chain. And then I think what you're going to see in the next few months is us like really integrating like all those products together and having AI kind of live and help shepherd pull requests all the way from the moment you write the change to the moment that it's out in production and beyond.
Love that. Merrill, do you want to walk us through the problem space as you see it at the moment between code generation and the outer loop of review, test, and deploy?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to what I alluded to in the beginning, which is that you have now this. First of all, you have a problem of scale where with these AI code generation tools, 10-person teams are now doing the work of 50-person or 100-person teams, and are now finding that these outer loop processes and tools that they have just can't keep up with the volume. So on code review, as more engineers are writing PRs, now managers are just getting overwhelmed with the volume of reviews that they have to do and getting swamped by that. On testing, we're finding that all these changes now are incredibly increasing the volume of CI that's needed and causing either higher cost or just higher latency on getting all of these tests run. And deployment similarly, how are we merging all these PRs in, avoiding conflicts, deploying them all to production? All of these parts of the outer loop are being stressed in a way and to a magnitude that they never have been before. And it's not just so it's both the volume, but then it's also the nature of AI generated code that's causing the stress because there have been several studies out there around AI generated code being potentially buggier, potentially less performant, introducing security vulnerabilities. I think in many cases, engineers are using these tools to write features quickly, but may not necessarily be looking closely at what is the actual code that's written and that's going into these PRs as they create them. So it's not just about the volume; it's also about the nature of this code and the need for more review and more testing than ever before on this. So between those two factors, I think we're seeing a level of stress on the outer loop that we've never seen before, and so much of the attention in the industry, I think, has gone towards the inner loop of how do we use AI to generate code and write more code, write better code, feed more context to write code, but not as much attention, nowhere near as much attention is being paid to, what are the second order effects then, like what happens downstream of that, and how does the outer loop like keep up and evolve and adapt to this world where so much of our code is written by AI.
I think one lens you can choose to look at it through is the single player versus collaborative experience. And as Merrill was saying, a lot of the existing tooling, Cursor, Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude Code, you name it, is amazing for a lot of individual developers right now, there's lack of standardization, right? The average developer is kind of hopping between these different tools. They have their own preferences, and half the developers, for good reason, also distrust them, and they're still working within Vim and finding other ways of code creation. We look at that as that's one half of the story. That's the individual working to create their code changes, but there's still the entire collaborative side. Where how do you defend the quality of the code base? How do you make sure things are flowing through the pipes smoothly, quickly? If you look at every one of the features in the tool chain Merrill is talking about, whether it's the review, that's two humans working together, talking to each other, it's looking over the CI results. Even AI code review can be viewed as one of many elements of validation, right? You have linters, you have unit tests, you have AI code review. That's all trying to collaboratively ensure that the code coming out the door is meeting the standards of the team, the standards of the repository, and then still progressing really smoothly and quickly through the pipes. We think that's one of the missing elements in a lot of the other tools that are rapidly being iterated and shipped out right now.
I would definitely agree. And I think the narrative is starting to shift more towards that. I think recently, with the emphasis being on code generation, let's say 6 months back, and it was a crazy time where we could do so much more with these AI code tools. Now everyone's starting to slow down and probably think more like a solution of Graphite, as in, shit, actually, we need to keep performance, standards, quality, and where we've been really focusing on pre these tools, which is where I think we're talking about now and how you're actually leveling up the game.
There's a huge gap. I mean, we all at some point vibe code, or you go on the weekends, you open up a side project, and you vibe code for 30 minutes, you try it out. And that's fantastic for a side project for a random initialization. But there's such a chasm between that and a 6,000 person engineering org with intense structure and processes and specialized testing patterns and deployment stuff. I think Graphite is much closer to the bleeding edge of what's actually used on the enterprise level today.
100%. And that's actually a really interesting point. And Merrill, you touched on this, that the magnitude is changing. So let's say we're taking an example of a 10-person engineering team. What's happening when we're taking this to an 100-person team or enterprise grade businesses? Like, that is just a different ball game. The people scale challenges are going to be a big thing to try and solve.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the places where we're seeing, we're really seeing the productivity gains of AI, of these AI code generation tools not yet be fully realized, largely because of exactly what you're saying. Part of it is due to just the scale of the code bases. It's the amount of context that you need at like a 10,000 person engineering org, with like a massive repo is just so different from vibe coding something and popping open Replit agent on the weekend. And I think AI does fundamentally do better with those more 0 to 1 projects now than it does like massive existing projects. And it's getting a lot better. I think we've seen huge improvements both in the models, and then also moving from for Diamond, one of the big performance gains that we got was shifting from RAG to agentic code browsing, where now we just let Diamond go and browse the repo and look at function definitions and go through the relevant files and build that context for itself. But even doing that, I think it's much harder in an environment where you have so much context to absorb. And a lot of the game now is also, where does this context live? It's not just in the code base. It's also in like the linear Jira ticket associated with the task. It's in a Figma file. It's in Notion, Confluence, Google Docs. Like, there are so many different sources of context. Some of it just lives in engineers' heads, and you need a way to then effectively communicate that to the model as best you can in order to have it operate well in that enterprise environment. A lot of it is in process, like understanding engineering culture. So how can you have it learn the practices and the standards of a particular code base? How can you make it customizable so that a team can have Diamond enforce the set of rules and guidelines that they want, and tune the comments to be helpful for both the particular libraries they use or particular practices that they want to enforce in their engineering cultures. That is a lot of the challenge, I think, at the enterprise scale. But what's interesting is that I think we're also seeing enterprises adapting faster than ever. Like we have, it's not, a lot of our early customers and the fastest growing ones are the like super high growth tech companies, like the Shopify, Snowflakes, Datadogs of the world, Figma. But what we're seeing now is we're also seeing a huge amount of interest from more traditional industries, and companies that wouldn't necessarily be thought of as like tech forward. Their engineers are just using Cursor or Windsurf. Like they're being forced to adapt, and I think they are, much to their credit, I think they're responding faster than ever to the shift that's happening, and are now looking at tools like Diamond to help them like, keep up with the way that their engineers are writing code these days.
Love that. What have been some product and engineering challenges in building diamonds? If we were to get under the hood, and if I was an engineer walking into Graphite today and we were like, right, let's look at diamonds. Like, what's been really challenging building the product?
Yeah, I'm happy to walk through this a little bit. So there's different layers to it. And we've been able to kind of level up and level up to the layers over time. So initially, you first need access to the data. So you need a really powerful, high performance syncing engine going back and forth between Graphite, GitHub, but really any client on top of GitHub. How do you have access to the wealth of information that exists there? It's the PRs as soon as they're published, but also every time they're updated. It's the comments being written to them. It might even be historical information, other old comments, old PRs. Some of these repositories are millions thick, right? So getting access to that in a nice real-time streaming system. Once we have access to that, as we do, and luckily Graphite was already positioned, we already had a lot of that infrastructure underpinning the stuff we had. Next step, similar to a lot of streaming-based systems, or you build a pattern of middleware or hooks to hook into that. So, hey, the moment someone submits a new version of a pull request, let's take some action. In this case, the action we're going to take is leaving an AI code review. So we got to look at that diff, and the simplest thing you could do is you could run it through an LLM, and you could say, okay, great, give me some comments, review this code. Probably a lot of us at some point have copy and pasted a large diff into ChatGPT and said, review this. Now, that's a start. That's okay. The older models, they would just write you a fun essay about your code change, but it would not be useful. You'd be reading more information than what you originally asked for. The newer models get a little bit better, and if there's a blatant error, they'll just describe it to you, and they'll kind of call it out, especially as we start approaching, really ever since Sonnet 3.5, we saw the intelligence getting to where we needed it to be. But that's still not quite good enough, because you can just say, hey, now ask me, leave a code review, find me the bugs, find me issues. But you want things on top of that. One, you want to lower the false positive rate on top of that. So you want to do post analysis on the initial wave of ideas presented by that. There are a variety of patterns. You can try and critic it out. You can create hard encodings of common false positives. You can also try to vector match on other forms and data sets of false positives. You can encode those as vectors, find similarities, cluster them, and say, hey, this is probably a false positive style of comment. We can go further. We can then update the wording of that comment to be consistent with the rest of the code base. If it's a suggestion, we can also then augment it, look back at the original code change and say, hey, let's also include a suggested edit so you can accept that and immediately action on that comment. We're just trying to really improve it to be maximally valuable. We could combine all that information, leave a high-level review or summary level comment. We can also use tool use. We can explore the existing code base through search. We can explore our old data set. We can even find through MCP style actions information on Slack and Notion, all these other resources, and pull in context and say, hey, we're reading the code. We're coming up with some hypotheses of what might be right or wrong with this. Now let's compare that to all the other sources of context possible. It's going to use a lot of tokens. It's going to take some time, but we can go through those actions all so that we can kind of try and emulate what a real engineer is. What a real engineer has that context in the back of their head. They have opinions on what comments make sense, what's above the cut, what's below the cut. They can post that and they can leave it on the PR. We're doing all these kinds of actions to try and leave high quality comments. What we really care about with Diamond is, if we're going to speak up, if we're going to distract a developer, we're going to get in their way a little bit, let's make sure that comment is really high value, really important. We're fine. We're okay to be a little bit on the quiet side. We want to make sure when we're raising our hand, when the AI is raising its hand, it has something meaningful to say. I think about this like self-driving cars. Self-driving car needs to crash not just less than a human, but a lot less than a human before we're going to trust it, because we're going to come in with that initial skepticism. So we view Diamond in a similar fashion. But the engineering challenges don't stop there. The hardest part, I would say, on top of this whole system, I can describe a system, you can build it, but then how do you rapidly iterate and evolve the system? this is, I think, where you start getting to the bleeding edge challenges of it, because, and there's a lot of research on this, you can change a single word in a prompt and it can have a completely different performance and
Can
results.
blow up our costs. It can yeah.
It could do so much. I mean, they've done studies on this where literally just if you're asking an LM which is better, if A or B, if you do A or B or B or A, it'll have a bias on like even just the ordering of the words in the question as to the results it'll give. And that matters at the scale and the accuracy that we're trying to create. So now we need patterns offline. We have eval sets of large sets of internal comments and things we found from open source to say, okay, given this pull request, here's a valid comment that should be left on that PR. If we tune our prompts, do we still leave those comments? Do we leave better comments? Do we catch bugs we were missing before? Can we cultivate? It's very hard. We have to do it by hand, but we can cultivate large eval sets and kind of run our models and test them on it, run our pipelines on those. It's also really important too, because sometimes you go from Claude Sonnet 3.5 to 3.7. It's not strictly better. It's not always better. That was actually an example of a jump where we saw a lot of old queries sometimes performed worse. And now we need to start getting very nitty gritty around what parts of the process are we running different models and different queries on to get that performance. Last thing I'll say is that, some of the cutting edge patterns has to get into almost A/B test style experiments. There's so much non-determinism. It's the same as, when we're pulling in context from dynamic systems, we're searching your Slack, we're searching, your old pull requests, all this information. You can't just easily set up a ton of test cases. To some degree, you need to be able to test and experiment with this on production. And it starts looking like a lot of, honestly, product style and UI style development, where we're going to roll it out to 1%. We're going to run an experiment on it. We're going to see what's performing better, and we can constantly evolve and tune the models. So there's a lot of meta engineering that goes around that to squeak out the upper bounds of performance here.
I love that mindset. We've spoken a little bit there around the evolution of Diamond, and we've spoken about different model performances, training models, evaluating models. Where do you think we're going in the next 3 to 6 months? That might even be a little bit too far in the future with the 6 months part. Could be the models, but it could very much also be around how you're building some of this thinking into Diamond. You touched on a really nice feature about Diamond raising its hand, staying quiet, but raising its hand when it really needs to. Could even be something like that, but want to know, like, from both your minds, where are you thinking the next?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting right now. Just seeing, first of all, just seeing some of the capabilities of the base models get evolving every model jump. We work closely with Anthropic. They were investors in our Series B and have been really good partners for us on building Diamond. And seeing them launch the like web browsing API was a really cool piece, because now Diamond, previously I think all AI reviewers and code generation tools had this problem where you had the knowledge cliff or like cutoff, where at a certain point we didn't know if you're using like the latest version of a library. We just didn't have access to the documentation, and we had a problem in the past where we'd give incorrect comments saying like, the latest version of this is like 12.1.0, and really it's like 12.4 by now, and Diamond just didn't know that. But now you can actually have Diamond just go and browse the web and look up the latest version, read the documentation, comment on that with the most accurate, up-to-date information on a given library. And that part of it is really exciting. So seeing how much those capabilities have evolved. From a product standpoint, I think having one thing that we're thinking about a lot is like that I alluded to in the beginning is, how do we take Diamond? Like Diamond now, it lives. You can use it outside of the core Graphite platform. It can plug into GitHub and just comment in your PRs in GitHub, much like a human reviewer would. But the question for us then is like, how do we start to integrate it more with the entire rest of the process? Because that is so much of what we do, and so much of the value of Graphite comes from like that entire end-to-end tool chain. So can you have a tool that's reading your CI logs and addressing failures and generating you a suggestion to like fix the failed test and like rerun it with one click. That we already do today. Diamond can do that with many of the common CI providers. how do we solve merge conflicts if you're using Graphite's merge queue and your PR gets like kicked out from the queue because it failed or because there was a merge conflict? Can we have Diamond just go and address that, proactively and pull you in once it's generated a set of fixes? Another one that we're playing around with internally that we're quite excited to preview in the next few weeks is having like a chat like interface on the pull request, so you can interact, much like with Cursor, you can with Cursor Windsurf, like you can interact with the PR, you can ask Diamond questions, you could even in the future you'll be able to ask Diamond to like write tests for the PR, break it up into smaller pieces into a stack, like take actions like that on the pull request, and have Diamond just be this companion that's like working with you, like helping you to like review and iterate on the PR, like right from the PR page. And we're super excited about that. Especially one of our hotter takes, I'd say, is that as agents, I think there's so much excitement around like the IDEs right now, but I think as agents become more of the primary way that we generate code, I think we're gonna see this massive shift where human engineers go from writing code in IDEs, even with some of these tools, to primarily reviewing code or primarily iterating with agents on pull requests that have been. We'll prompt them, the agent will take a first pass at it, and then you'll come to the pull request page or a future evolution of that and iterate with your agent counterparts. And that's like long term what we're really excited about is facilitating that interaction, working with like all the different companies building agents, and having Diamond kind of orchestrate and facilitate all of that iterative process.
Love that. That's really good context. I love the chatbot style that you might be thinking about integrating. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Help us
soon.
Yeah, exactly. Help us understand the types of people that you might be looking for Graphite, because I know that you've expressed Series B, you would be looking at hiring smart people. So I want to get a sense of the types of people that you'd be looking to bring into your business. For people listening who are interested in what you're building, help us understand a little bit more there about your mindset.
Yeah. You want to take this?
Sure. I'm obsessing about hiring day and night. I think the most important thing we can do right now is further scale out Graphite's team engineering, but also outside of engineering as well, with kind, smart, absolutely urgent, fast-moving individuals. We're in office right now. You can see behind us. We're a full in-person team in Soho in New York. We're scaling across the board. We're doubling the engineering team. We're doubling everything from design, go-to-market, everything. We're mostly edge constrained on a lot of challenges right now, as Merrill's outlining a lot of these ideas. And you hear this when you talk to other companies too. There's such an overhang of opportunity. These models have shifted, the technology has shifted. There's opportunities abound to build and leverage value. And there's really like no blocker to rolling this stuff out, except folks getting on the keyboard and actually implementing it and building it out and shipping it today. And it's funny because you hear so much conversation around are engineers being replaced? Is this field dead and done? But to be honest, we've never had more appetite to expand the engineering team. We've never had more projects and more things to go build and do. And really, I think it's that the opportunity window has massively expanded. And there's also a lot of appetite from consumers to use and adopt these things. How can we gracefully but quickly scale up the engineering team to meet the demand of all these opportunities and build them out? What we look for, honestly, if I was to sum it up, it's those three words I said. We need folks who are incredibly kind, wonderful communicators, caring about one another, caring about building out this company, about talking to our users. Conversations like what you and I are having right now, that only matters if folks are caring individuals. Two, they got to be really expert. We're lucky to serve the best engineering teams in the world. It's like selling ice to Eskimos. Like, we're building the tools for teams like Merrill and Datadog and all these other wonderful companies who also build the best tools in the world, and yet they're choosing to use Graphite, and we get to help advise them on their workflows, not just advise, but help iterate with them on what the novel workflows are in these changing times. If we're going to be a part of that conversation, discussing how merge queues work, how pull requests should merge, all these things, we need the engineering team, the team in the room, to be outstandingly expert at software engineering about what we do. And lastly, we need that speed and that urgency. the fundamental value prop at the heart of all these features we're describing within Graphite is that we speed up engineering teams. We keep the whole flow moving faster. We're making those changes small, easier to review. We're giving you feedback earlier. We're shipping them out to production. It's at the end of the day, a big part of that is velocity. And we cannot be selling high velocity engineering tooling if we ourselves are not a very fast, urgent engineering team ourselves. So it's something we pride ourselves in, but we want to really prioritize as we keep expanding. All startups need it, but I think we need it in an exceptional degree.
You've done that pitch a few times. You said it's in your mind day and night. I've heard that. That's rehearsed.
The number of I actually like it. It's kind of a fun part of my job. But I talk to so many engineering candidates. I talk to about 5 people every single day. Yeah. As we're growing, we had to talk to a lot of people. It's a lot of these conversations. I'm like, what I'll do is I'll get coffees near our office, and I'll just be lapping around Soho, sipping a coffee. People are asking what's engineering like at Graphite, and by the end of the day, I've accidentally had 4 or 5 cups of coffee.
Yeah, exactly. I bet you've repeated kind, expert, velocity a number of times. But for people listening, we've had 2 extremely passionate guys around what they're building, and Tomas and the team as well around what they're doing at Graphite, building out Diamond for these incredible teams. If you are kind, expert, move with speed, move with urgency, you should 1,000,000% be talking to these guys and girls, because they're going places. And I think, as Greg put it, they're at the bleeding edge of where companies are building. And you're absolutely in the right space at the right time. So I'm rooting for you guys. Good for you. A massive thanks for spending your time coming to talk to us around what you're building. And we'll be back in 6 to 12 months to see how far you've come.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Elliot.
Absolute pleasure. And for people listening, below, details of the guys, get in touch with them. All the likes, shares, subscribership, all that good stuff is massively appreciated. And bye for now. Thanks, chaps.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found at Engineers.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is Engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.